Good morning and welcome back to another episode of Leading Edge, where we talk about all things leadership. And today I'm so excited to have Samantha Ennist with us. Sam has had her entire career basically in talent management and talent enablement. And her and I have known each other now for 5 or 6 years. And so we just thought it would be really cool to talk about the things that are going on with Sam and her company, and how that relates to leadership. So, Sam, maybe you could just do a quick introduction yourself, and then we'll get right at it.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. And I'm thrilled to be here. This is really exciting. So a little bit about me. So as John said, full career in organizational development, talent management. I did start out as a teacher way back when. It feels like a lifetime ago. I taught grade 4 and grade 6 in Ontario. And so I think I always wanted to go into education. And so while the teaching piece didn't quite land, education happens everywhere. So I thought there must be other ways to do this. And that's really what pulled me into more of that corporate private sector, into sort of learning and development, which of course transitioned into OD and then sort of talent and assessment and coaching. So
Yeah, yeah, and in fact, in full transparency, that's how Sam and I met. Is we did a program together at a place that Sam worked. It was a women in leadership program. Actually, we were really excited. It was a program that was just launched, sorry, in an otherwise male-dominated environment, and it was pretty cool. So I know you're passionate about it. I know I'm passionate about it. Super excited about this. So Sam, as we kind of talked about leading into this, I'm just sort of curious, just to start, about what's keeping you and your team up at night these days in terms of leadership development, pipeline, stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, we connected very quickly, didn't we, on all these
Of course.
things, leadership. I think we sort of knew right away that there was a lot to talk about and a lot that we could share. Uh, Other than the fact that it's fall and it seems year end is coming up very, very quickly. And of course that keeps everybody up at night because you always feel that there's a lot to do still at the end of the year. And of course we have goals as well from the talent side, but so does the rest of the organization. So how
Of
are
course.
we all working together to make sure everybody gets done what they need to do before the end of the year? So there's that sort of hovering over. A big challenge for us at the moment is we're looking at things like critical roles. Succession planning is a big one
Mm,
for us at the moment, and you know, especially in terms of that population that is sort of on its way out, retiring.
yeah.
So exciting time in their lives, of course. For us, a little more challenging. How do we retain that knowledge, and not just the knowledge, sort of the wisdom as well? There's a lot of other experience that goes on, of course, beyond the technical component of a role. How do we make sure that stays? How do we sort of share that with the folks who are still here, folks who are potentially coming in to the organization? So lots to do around that. So that's sort of top of mind for us. One thing anyway.
Yeah, and that is tough because there's of course the two or three parts to leadership that we always talk about. So first of all, most leaders are still actively working in the field, whatever it is that they're doing. So accountants still doing some accounting, HR leaders still doing some HR, and so on and so forth. So there's hat one. Hat two now is they manage the work of the team.
Yep.
And then hat three is the leadership. We lead people, we manage process. And so this leadership part is the really interesting part, because yes, there's all this tacit knowledge, but there's also the leadership legacy or change in leadership styles that might be happening through, kind of this boomer generation to the newer generations. I'm curious how you're managing all of that, how you're managing this transition.
Yeah, it's a very broad question.
Of
So
course it is. Yeah.
I think so when we drill it down, so a little bit about the process. So yeah, there's that succession, there's that leadership piece. One thing we're actually a very flat organization.
Okay.
we're quite a big little company, if I can use that, but we're a quite flat organization. So it's really important for us to know that we've got the right people in the right roles,
Mm-hmm.
that they have the right skills, that leaders are coached and developed on sort of all aspects of leadership. And
Yep.
we've had this conversation before, and it's not unique to either any places that you and I have worked, but we do tend to promote based on technical ability.
Yep.
And so what about those leadership skills, the emotional intelligence, the other workplace behaviors and preferences that somebody brings to a role that may not be that technical expertise, but it's those other pieces that the role needs. So I think it's digging into that aspect of a role and developing that in our leaders as well.
Nice. And kind of going away from the process, I'm just really curious. I'm sure we'll have some alignment here between you and I, which we always do, but in your mind, so this is not necessarily how it's working at your where you're working, but in your mind, what are the sort of key attributes, traits, or skills that the best leaders you've seen have?
So I'll think about some of the leaders that have led me.
Perfect.
It's an exercise I love to do actually when I teach leadership is a my best boss
Yeah.
exercise. And think about what was it that your best boss did, or how they behaved. For me, it was really somebody that empowered, somebody I can learn from. One, but not just that transactional exchange of information. It's more how they show up, how they believe in you as an individual, how they empower and trust. Um, and then people who sort of advocate as well. So who recognize the strengths in, let's say, my abilities,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course leverage those. So that for me is really strong leadership anyway in my eyes. I've worked for some very strong leaders who were that way, and I think
Yeah.
that's what really helped to propel me. So
Yeah, and we do the same thing in every start of our leadership program. And actually, I'm gonna, if I can, steal that term, "my best off," because I frame it similarly, but I don't have a title for it, and I love that title.
good.
So I'm gonna
That's
steal that.
I
Yeah.
have to give a shout out to that one. So I've been carting that one around with me for a while, and from my days at Benjamin Moore, and
Okay.
worked with a company called More Retail, and that is a More Retail exercise. So I'm going to give them the shout out for that one. It's brilliant.
I love it. I love it. So much goodness in what you described there. One in particular that I know is there, and we talk about it and we teach it. But I'd be curious in how you think we get it, which is this notion of trust. You know, trust and creating psychological safety and all of that is imperative to the success or otherwise of a leader, employee relationship.
Yeah,
How did these best bosses, if you will, build that with you? Because it's
yeah.
not easy. It doesn't just happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. And I love that you brought up psychological safety. Quick sidebar. I was fortunate enough to be in a virtual room with Dr. Amy Edmondson not very long ago. So
Okay.
kind of fangirled over that a little bit. It was very exciting.
Yeah.
Um, building building that level of trust. It's that idea of vulnerable trust, right? It's not just
Hmm.
trust where I can count on this person to hand in a report when they say they're going to, or show up when they say they're going to. It's less. I mean, of course we need that, but that's more reliability. Vulnerable trust for me is feeling comfortable that you can sort of own your mistakes,
Okay.
ask questions when you don't know. And I love a leader that, and again, I've had them in the past where they sort of admit to, I think we could have done this better.
Hmm.
And even sharing a little bit of their personal kind of who they are, rather than coming in with
Yeah.
that facade. We want to get to know our leaders a little bit better. We're all human. So I think that's what the vulnerable trust is for me.
Nice.
And
Nice.
then I think that sets the tone for the team then to know that it's okay. So if I mess up, and hopefully we're not messing up too badly, but we're not perfect. And so we stub our toe, right? But how do we bounce back from that? And I think we need that soft place to land, as much as
Nice.
we do at home, right? You have
Yeah,
kids, I
yeah,
have
yeah.
kids.
Yeah,
Uh, kids need that soft place to land when they screw up, and
yeah.
I think we need it too. So why should that look and feel any different in the workplace where we spend so much of our time?
Yeah, and so a couple things on my mind. The first is sort of that differentiation between what we respect in people, that reliability you talked about. So we
Right.
respect when people show up on time, when they do what they say what they do, when they follow through, when they do all of those things. That stuff we respect, and that's of course a part of trust. We'll grow some trust through that, but what we ultimately trust is people, right?
Yes.
And so in trusting people is what you've just spoke about, which is so good. What it reminds me of, all the things you said. So for the second piece, there's actually one of the models we use for psychological safety, just to make it easy, is Finn Clark's model. So
Okay.
it's a four-step model. And so the first is inclusion safety. So I just feel like I belong here and I can be myself and I don't have to put on masks or anything like that. And
Okay.
I would say most often in organizations we tend to have that, which is great. The second level is what you talked about, which is the I can make a mistake. Learner safety is what he calls it. So
Okay.
I don't have that fear of what happens if I make the mistake, and I'm not always, I always use a hockey analogy. I'm holding the stick too tight because
Right.
I'm worried about making a mistake. It's not that we're looking to make a mistake culture, but we're trying to make it okay when you
Right.
do, right?
And it's risk taking too, right? In a lot of
Of
cases, and
course.
we need to take those risks. But
Yeah. But we need to be vulnerable on both ends to to say I made a mistake, and for the leaders to also acknowledge that, yeah, that's not that big a deal, and I made
right.
that mistake before, and making it safe for that. The third level is then what they call contributor safety. So now you and I feel like we can get our opinions and thoughts across to each other, and I don't have to risk that you're not going to accept my ideas and
Mhm.
thoughts. And
Mhm.
the last one, probably the hardest one, is what we call challenger safety. So now you actually can tell me I'm wrong, or you think I'm wrong, and
Wow.
so it's a fun one. And most places I work with, maybe we get to level 2, but we're not quite at level 3 and 4 yet. I'm just curious where you think you're at in the continuum where you're working now.
Interesting. It's funny, as you were reading through that, I visualized it almost as quadrants, and then
Mhm.
but they're stages. So I got to think about that. Where are we in the continuum? You said that was
Yeah, yeah. So do you feel like there's a sense of belonging? Do you feel like it's okay to make mistakes if people are trying? Do you feel like people
yeah.
are getting their opinions heard? And do you feel like, people could challenge their leader?
Yeah. I can speak for like from my experience.
Yeah.
We have the particular team that I'm a part of. Um, very strong leadership, and we are afforded that opportunity to challenge, to have a voice. um, there's a strong exchange of feedback, all that great stuff. So I can't speak for all the other teams. I would like to believe that that's in place.
Me too.
I'm fortunate, we're a very people first culture,
Nice.
and so I think there are some very strong, in terms of the relationship, and how people get along and work together and respect one another. So I'd like to believe it's there. Realistically, I mean, it's going to be different with different groups across the organization, different leaders, nature of the job
Yeah, of
potentially. So,
course. Of
um,
course.
but I think that when I think about it, I think we do better than we do not so well, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah,
So
it makes a lot of
yeah,
sense.
yeah, I'd like to believe that.
And so people first culture, awesome. How do your leadership competencies, or how is that reflected in sort of the day-to-day operation, in your opinion? How do we bring that to life?
Yeah, that's one of those other things that is keeping us up at night, right
Okay.
now. We are just starting out a big project to
Okay.
really hone those competencies, but break them down by skill and by level and by role and by sort of proficiency and that sort of thing. Um, sorry, ask me the question again. This will be something we edit out.
Yeah, no worries. It's the how do we bring all these qualities that you talked about, and we're in a people first culture.
Right,
How
people.
do we kind of guess hold leaders accountable, or how do we build that into our processes to make sure it's actually happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. As I said at the beginning, things have been, it's very sort of checklisty at the beginning, if I can use that
Yeah,
term.
fair
So
enough.
they're the right competencies, absolutely. Have we integrated them enough into our talent processes, into our performance, into our day to day? I don't know. I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
And I think that's what we're tasked with now is how do we integrate
Mhm.
all of that so things feel more seamless for people, so that talent programs make sense for leaders in the organization, so that talent programs, it's understood how talent actually influences strategy and supports the overall strategy. So
Nice.
that is in progress.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, lots to do.
awesome. And we've been focused on what good looks like so far, and I'm also curious. Of course, I want no attribution to this of where or when this happened in your career, but there are there are some not great leaders out there
Yeah,
in our world, and I guess what do you think is getting in the way for those leaders, in your opinion?
I always hear time. That seems to come
Hmm.
up the most. I don't have the time. Um, but I think that is potentially based on maybe a misconception of how to lead.
Okay.
That there are certain, you have to take time out to coach. You have to take time out to do performance reviews. You have to take time out to do your one-to-ones. And while all those things are true, I think again, if we think about leading our people in a more holistic way, how do we again integrate? It's kind of my word of the day.
Mm.
How are we integrating all those things in the day to day? We can coach in real time, right? We don't need a separate 1 hour conversation with a direct report to coach them. We talk through things in a one-on-one. We can sit side by side and work through whatever the task is. So I hear that a lot. I hear that time gets in the way. I think a lot of leaders have their own work to do as well, and so there becomes a challenge of, well, how do we teach our leaders to delegate so that now again we're providing opportunities to our direct reports, we're coaching them and teaching them through how to do that level. I think that would let leaders step away from being in the day to day, the task piece, focusing more on the higher level aspects of their role while still developing their teams beneath them. Now we're kind of loop back to succession, right? Now
Yeah.
we've got people
Yeah.
cross trained. So I think that's the big one, is the time, but it's not understanding how to do all those other pieces
Yeah.
that maybe makes it feel a bit daunting.
Yeah, and we hear that. So we did a survey last year with leaders, and time, sort of the emotional side of people, if you will, were two of the top three things we heard. The other one was, I feel like I set a good expectation, but I didn't get the result I was hoping for.
Mhm.
And so those are the top three things that came up. But this time one, I love the way you attach time to how we lead. And so it's not, we often talk about how much time are you spending with your leader hat to try to illustrate to them that they're not doing enough of it.
Right.
Uh, but maybe I like the integration thought, and how do we integrate
Yeah.
coaching, feedback, want like these development opportunities? How do we integrate that into just our daily work and day to day piece? So I really like that.
I think that comes from my teaching days.
Okay.
So way back when, so again, you teach grade 4, grade 6, you're teaching every subject. And then of course, and we're talking a long time ago, I'm going to date myself, but at the time it was. And then you had the social studies theme. So whether it's the Aztecs or medieval or something like that. So in order to cover everything you need to cover, because we're also bound by certain expectations
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
kids. So I started to integrate things. So when I taught medieval for grade 4, we learned to play chess in math, and we read some very sort of grade 4 level Shakespeare at one time. There's a woman in
Okay.
Stratford, Ontario here who kind of distills Shakespeare down into rhyming couplets, and it's perfect
Okay.
to learn Shakespeare. So we did Twelfth
Nice.
Night. Our drama, we actually performed it. So it's all about kind of integrating those pieces, but then it becomes part of that culture then, or the fabric. And so that's where mindset goes, and that's what we're immersed in right now. And so I think it kind of comes from that. It just makes sense to weave things together. So
And it's interesting you talk about mindset because that's actually what I had written down to go next.
one
And
mind
leadership is a mindset,
for
right?
sure.
Right. And I'll go first on this one to not put you on the spot, but often what I'm seeing that's getting in the way of leaders, particularly leaders who maybe have been at this for a while, is one, ego. So they can't get out of the way of their ego to see things the way we've been talking about right now. Um, it's their own sort of potentially insecurities or fear of failure. And so it's easier and more comfortable for us to just do things the way we've been doing it,
Yeah.
and things like that. And, to some respect, they actually even fear, it would seem, that, well, if I do what I think is their job of developing the next level of talent, maybe I will be out of a job. And so,
Yeah.
those are some of when we get more raw with what's getting in the way, those are the things I'm seeing in people. And I think it does go back to mindset. So, what would you add to that from your perspective?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, we've covered a lot though, ego and I like that idea of like what happens to me, right? If I
Mhm.
develop people, and am I now in the hot seat? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Would you agree, or would you, is that some of the stuff you're seeing, or of those people that might be, and again, no attribution, could have been in your past, is that some of the stuff you see that they're holding leaders back still?
I have seen um leaders that do hold things very close to their chest, that they don't want to
Yeah,
let go of certain pieces.
right.
And I don't think it's just unique to leaders. I think when maybe people are feeling a little unsure about their role, or
Hmm.
um, people get a little bit possessive sometimes over things that they're working on. And so you don't want to let that go or delegate it, because what does that mean for ownership now? Does that mean that you don't own it, or you don't have influence on it anymore? So I think that's I do think that that happens. And so
Yeah.
back to, if we're holding things too close and not sharing, now we're not cross training our people. We're not empowering or coaching them to learn something new. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Which actually kind of goes to where we had previously thought we might go with this conversation, which is sort of that growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And I'm curious to what your thoughts are on the difference between the two, growth
mhm,
versus fixed.
yeah, I think so. I had to. I'm gonna go a couple of places. So one, of course, growth mindset, right? I was a teacher, so everything is a learning opportunity. Uh, we're in a very rapidly changing world.
Mhm.
AI is either a four-letter word, or it's sort of the shiny thing. We know it's coming, but a lot of
Yeah.
understanding around that. But so there's a lot of pivoting very quickly, adapting very quickly to what is new and changing. I think if we stay in that fixed mindset, things are fine the way they are, we're not taking any
Yep.
risks, then we miss out on opportunities to grow, to innovate, to become leaders in our field, like all that great stuff. And it's not just the big things, right? Even individually, right? If we're not constantly learning, we're not growing. And
Indeed.
so on that fixed side, is it sort of keeps things status quo, right? We know what we need to know. We're good. We're rolling along. Don't need to do anything different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's interesting you say that. I listen to a podcast whenever I drive. I listen to podcasts, and on this sort of fixed versus growth mindset, one of the examples they gave is differentiating between, someone who has something happen to them. So I'll use my daughter. She had an event, this summer where she didn't make a team. That's probably the first team she's never made, right? And so there was six goalies. She's a hockey goalie. There was six goalies at the event, and she finished third. So she was the third, best, but they only take two. And
right.
so the fixed mindset is, well, I was better than the other three. The growth mindset, the way this person said it in the podcast, would be, what do I need to do to be as good as those other two, or get back into the top two?
Right.
And it's kind of what you said resonated with me in the same way. Is the fixed mindset is, well, we're good enough. We're still leaders in our industry. We're
Right.
still doing things well. Why would we need to change? Versus, how do we stay on top? And I think that's a big thing. And I am toggling right now. I'm not there yet with, what does that mean for leadership as well? The fixed versus, well, I've gotten this far, versus growth, which is, I need to grow so I can help my team grow, and all of that. So much stuff out there. I think we're just scratching the surface.
And where's, and then is there something to be said for keeping things stable? Because while we are, let's say as a business, while we are trying to grow and innovate and everything else, there's a lot to be said for that core stability. It's like exercise, right? You've got to have a strong core to do the rest of it. There's something to be said for stability, to keep the lights on and to keep those inner processes going, so that you can go off and grow and innovate and learn new things. So something to be said there too for balance.
It reminds me of a quote one of my old bosses used to use. And I didn't actually realize there was a real historical relevance to this quote. He always used to say, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater," and that's what it sounds like, right? So if we're doing things really well that don't need to change, let's not change for the sake of change.
Absolutely.
But if there's opportunity to change, then let's do that, which is awesome. So of course, you and I could keep talking all day, and we probably would. But I just wanted to wrap it up and sort of ask you again, a broad-based question. But if you had advice to a newer leader, if you had advice as to how they might accelerate their leadership journey, what would you tell them?
Wow. I would say listen to your team. I would tell them to find whatever opportunities are possible to learn about leadership, but to be open-minded in that, because leadership is not that transactional piece that it used to be, right? You do your job, I'm going to reward you for it, very back and forth, but embrace it more as a transformation, not just for you, but for your team.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a big question.
It is a big question, and we've covered so much that
I know.
what I wanted to finish with is what I'm hearing throughout this is, some of the key things, first of all, that you talked about earlier, in that trust and vulnerability and all of that. If I could wrap that up or paraphrase, I think that what you were talking about there is, be a human. 100%. Humanize yourself as a leader first. And that's going to win you a lot of trust and relationship there. The relationship matters is another thing that I'm hearing throughout this conversation. So, what it says to me is, I think we used to talk about this stuff as the soft skills, but I don't think they're soft
They're not
at all.
soft. I
think
agree.
they are some of the most important skills to being a leader. And then you've just added this other great stuff about be a great listener. Do more listening than we do talking while we're learning. Be open-minded to other ideas that maybe aren't ours. There's so much in there that I think is fabulous. So, any closing thoughts from your point of view?
I was just gonna say, it sounds like that's an emotional intelligence conversation. So maybe a part 2 down the road, because we didn't even touch that today, John.
No,
I'm surprised that we didn't. So
I know we also didn't touch on predictive index, which I
no,
know
we
you
didn't.
and I are both passionate about, and I
Yes.
heard undertones of that in some of the conversation. So we'll definitely have a part 2.
We'll do an
At
assessment
some
version.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, listen, Sal, I just want to thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and again, our goal for this podcast is just to try to give people some insight on this whole thing called leadership. It's big, and we're just trying to simplify it a little bit for everybody. So, for our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this. And of course, if you want any more information or want to listen to this podcast, you can find us on www.fairwindstraining.com. And our podcast is on Spotify and elsewhere, of course. But we appreciate you listening, and we'll be back again next month. Bye for now. Thanks, Sam.